Because I'm using the slightly smaller, flatter yoke, I don't need quite as much fabric, so I am able to put it on a lot less. Fold over one side, that's always the rule. Then place the fold line of your pattern piece directly above the fold line of the fabric. I have seen it many times that students have actually moved it over a bit and it's not sitting exactly on it, and of course then things will not fit together so well. When you're cutting out, it's always important that you cut from the left so that your pattern piece sits on the right. It makes it way easier. You can move the fabric up with your left hand. And one of the things that I tend to do is I cut across everything that I'm going to cut out wherever I can cut on the left side, and then afterwards I'll cut the rest. So in this case here, I'm just cutting up and then I'm going to cut across. And literally I've got a smaller piece of fabric now that I can just shimmy around to always stay on the left. Of course, it doesn't always work, and sometimes you can also cut from the right, but it is not as natural to your hand if you're right-handed. If you're going into a corner, it's hard to get around. So if you're cutting from both sides, coming at the corner, then you get a much better result. And here I'm just going to demonstrate what happens if you cut it with the scissor. On the right side, just watch what my wrist is doing. It's at a really funny angle. You need to then lift your pattern piece with the fabric on the left hand side, but it's much harder to do. When you compare that to cutting it from the left side, as I'm doing here, watch my wrist is almost straight. It's way easier to do. So cutting from the left is just one of the things you should get into the habit of. Now I'm going to cut my little sleeve, and if you watch really closely, you'll notice that I haven't actually reduced it to the slender, which I should have done. But never mind. I forgot. Now I'm also going to show you how to cut the puff sleeve. That's the other option. And when you're cutting it out of a check, for example, like I am doing here, make sure that the checks are nicely lined up. I'm also going to interline it because it's a very special dress and I'm using a really nice but rather thin silk. So I'm going to interline the whole lot, and I'm going to put my lining and my shell fabric on top of each other, fold it over so that I get two pieces mirror image for each one, the shell and the lining, and then I only need to cut it out once, which is what I like doing, saving time. So make sure that the sleeve ends and starts at the same point where you have the underarm. That's quite important. And then we can pin it on and cut it out all in one go. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Again, I'm cutting from the left, I'm cutting through all those 4 layers. And then we need another piece, and that is the lovely turn up. If your child has a little bit of a thicker arm, then you really want to measure that, and you want to make sure that you have a good 4 centimeters movement room in there, and I didn't. So I'm using the 6 to 7, which might seem a lot more, but actually these turn ups and the arm size doesn't vary that much with children, so it's actually still quite small. So I'll do the 6 to 7, which gives me 4 centimeters movement room. I think that's really, really important. And then again, I need lining for this, so I'm cutting all 4 bits at the same time. And I pin them on. Again, you need it to have a fold on each so that you get 2 pieces mirror image. That's real important. Again, I'm cutting from the left and then I mark it. So you need to mark the front on the turn up and the main piece. You can cut out a little triangle if you like, makes it a little bit easier to see maybe later on when we start gathering the whole lot. And very important, I need to mark where I'm gathering from where we're going to attach the turn up, and I can then ignore what it says here, how much you have to gather it, because I'm going to do it a little bit less, obviously, because I use the wider turn up. Now let's mark all the other pieces as well while we're at it and cut everything out. So for the skirt, you want to move on the back where we're going to have the fold. On that sleeve, I'm just marking the shoulder head. You don't necessarily need to do that. It's actually, that piece is pretty much the same both sides. Mark the center fronts on the front piece of the yoke. And then we're going to do the pin tags. You can mark all three, the center and where you're going to sew, or you can just mark the center and then later on you can mark that with a textile marker, which is what I'm actually doing later on. So you can see both options and see what the pitfalls are of it. Now we're also going to mark where our sleeve starts, and then on the back piece we're going to mark where it ends. And also on the back piece we have another fold for integrated button placket, and we also need to mark that.